This week, I am teaching about understanding and recognizing the addictive voice and the 5 steps you can do to take back control so that you can hear, recognize, not feed, and move through the addictive voice to overcome your addiction. Addiction in any form always comes from the same part of the brain. There are good addictions and not so good addictions. So how do you know if the thing you're struggling with, if it's actually an addiction, if it's something you want to change? So first, let's talk about this. I'm going to go here real fast. A quick share. Okay, so telltale signs that the addiction you are thinking about might actually be something that you want to change. Again, there's all kinds of healthy addictions. I'm currently addicted to meditation. I think it's great. I wake up every day and I feel anxious until I do it. It takes up some of my time. I'm excited about it, but that's not an addiction I feel like I need to really change. Now, these toxic addictions cause mood swings. They might be affecting how you're working at work or at school. They might be affecting your relationships in a negative way. They might be changing how you're physically showing up. Are they causing you haggard skin, bad teeth, unhealthy hair, weight gain? Are you feeling like they're taking away your interest in other healthy areas? Do you not like to go outside and ride your bike anymore because you'd rather be spending time on your TV addiction? Are you noticing that you're having poor sleeping habits because you're staying up all night with your gaming addiction? Are there legal or financial issues because you're spending all your money on a substance that you would rather not be spending your money on? So if you're answering yes to any or a couple of these questions, I would say, let's take a look at whether or not this addiction deserves to stay in your life. Now, to set this up, it's really important to understand your brain. As someone who's struggled with addiction, I know what it's like to have tens of different thoughts all filtering through my head at the same time, all giving me different messaging. And it can be really confusing understanding where these thoughts are coming from, which thought to pay attention to. And for a lot of us, when there's all these different thoughts swirling, we tend to just find the simplest, easiest thought that has the fastest positive benefit, because in the sea of all these other thoughts, it can be confusing. Now, these thoughts, the ones that are the fastest, easy solutioning, avoiding pain thoughts, usually are coming from your bottom brain, the limbic system. So this area, the hippocampus, amygdala, I'm not sure how I'm pronouncing that. This is part of your limbic system. The limbic system is the most elemental part of your animal brain. All animals have it. This is basically our fight or flight. This is our emotions. This is like those base fears or judgments, things that pop up. We can't control them. And this is a part of your brain where it's not connected to your neurological system, so it can't make you actually do anything. It doesn't involve a human language. So these are thoughts that you can't really ration with. They're just these base things. Now, the prefrontal cortex up here is what separates humans from most of the rest of the animals on this planet. The prefrontal cortex actually is where you live. This is where Sarah is. This is where we can take the messaging that's coming from our limbic system, from the animal part of our brain, and we can decide if it's true or not. So let's say I'm watching a scary movie and there's a jump scare in my body. My prefrontal cortex can tell me, it's okay, you're not actually in trouble, it's just a movie. Or as I drive by McDonald's and my caffeine trigger gets turned on because I'm thinking about coffee, my prefrontal cortex can say, it's okay, you don't actually need a coffee, you only wanted it because you were driving by. So this is the part of our brain that we want to start pouring more attention into. And also, this is the part of the brain that actually is connected to the nervous system. So this is the executive seat of your brain. It actually controls your outcomes. It controls your emotions. It's the part that actually uses your hand to pick it up and put something into your mouth. It's all of the voluntary stuff. So when we're talking about the addictive voice, now that we have the background on how the brain works, the 5 steps are these. 1, be committed. If you can ask yourself the question, hey, if I could wave a magic wand right now and never have that addictive behavior come back, would I do it? If the answer is yes, that's a really good sign of your commitment. If you can ask yourself, hey, what are the things that this behavior is still serving me? Are there any positive benefits in my life of this behavior? And when you can really get to the answer of no, that's a great sign that you can be committed to recovery. Because when we're talking about recovering from addiction, you have to be at the point where you understand this is not serving you, not even once. It won't serve you, not even once, one more time. So how ready are you to walk away? Step number 2 is releasing the guilt about having the addicting voice and those urges and starting to understand that it's just a sign of a healthy brain to have these urges. Number 3, And we're going to talk about how to become what we call a peaceful warrior in the process of understanding and waiting with these urges out. Number 4, getting more mindful and creating a stronger brain so that when the urges come, it's easier and easier to resist. And number 5, getting excited and understanding that you truly can completely recover from this. You do not need to be dealing with this addiction the rest of your life. You're not sick. You're not broken. You just need to understand how your brain works and strengthen the areas that do not listen to the addictive voice. So let's jump in. When we're talking about being 100% committed, if you can, check in the links to this workshop and you'll see the worksheet that I've got. It's 2 pages, so you can follow along as we do this. But the step of being 100% committed, like I said, was, would you wave that magic wand and make it go away? Now, I used to be a binge eater. And so in the context of this webinar, I'll be using that analogy somewhat. There were times when I was binging and I would think about stopping, but I truly wasn't really at the point where I thought I needed to. I was not 100% committed, but I remember the day that I was in the middle of a binge and I got caught. The first time I got caught, someone walked in and saw me. And I remember the look in that person's eyes. And I remember that moment in my brain when I thought, never again. I hit that moment of my commitment. And that was the day that I got really serious about turning things around. And I started implementing the process that I'm working you guys through. So are you committed? Are you at that place yet where you really want to turn this around? Is there any benefit this habit still has over you? Because if you're not 100% committed, it's almost impossible to turn this voice off. So step number 1. Number 2, your healthy brain will always give you these urges. It is normal and natural for us to have addictive thoughts and voices. And we just need to accept this as a normal part of being a healthy human. Don't get triggered by it. Literally, Catherine Hansen, who wrote the book Brain Over Binge, just calls it neurological junk. It's just neurological junk. The limbic system in your brain likes to send out all kinds of messaging. It's not intelligent. It doesn't really know what's good for you long-term. It doesn't have the skills of your prefrontal cortex to understand the consequences long-term. It just throws out these low-hanging fruit of quick little dopamine kicks, right? So understanding that you cannot turn these thoughts off, you cannot regulate what they're telling you, and you don't need to. So when I walk by a brownie in the store and I see it and automatically my whole brain says, buy the brownies, I don't get surprised by it. I don't fight it. I just think, of course I want to eat that brownie. Of course, that's what my brain does. That's just what it does. I don't fight it. I don't judge myself over it. So when you can start really sorting out these thoughts from your limbic system as neurological junk, it helps a lot. And the test for how to know what's coming from your limbic system versus your prefrontal cortex is this. Any thoughts that support continuing the addictive habit are coming from the animal brain. I like to call it it because it's not a person, it's not an entity, it doesn't have logic. It's just the it part of my brain. Any thoughts that support my health, that support me having a happier life, that support me not continuing the addictive habit are coming from me. So I've got my it thoughts, it's thinking this, and I've got my thoughts, Sarah is thinking this. So we start to sort out which are the junk thoughts neurologically and which are the my thoughts. Now, remember, these urges that you're having, they don't have to indicate a bigger problem. They don't mean that you need to go to therapy. They don't mean that there's something wrong with your brain. They don't mean the thoughts are bad. These thoughts that are coming up are just trying to satisfy you to feed the urge. That's all. They want you to get rid of this uncomfortable urge. And so all the it thoughts are doing are giving you solutions for how to get rid of this urge. Number 2, surrendering and becoming a peaceful warrior. I really like this phrasing on peaceful warrior because your urges are fed by your attention. So starting to recognize that you cannot fight them. Anytime you try to logic with one of your addictive voice thoughts, it gives it energy, and that energy will make it stronger. So when you become the peaceful warrior, we aren't trying to run away from the urges. We aren't trying to minimize them. We're just noticing them. And so surrendering to this means that we can actually notice this thought and recognize it's not going to make us do anything. It's not going to make our hands move. We can just see it. And I like to think about like a baby over in a corner crying. She's been fed, she's had her diaper changed, all these different things. It's okay. Sometimes that's just what babies do. So when we're starting to get more into becoming a peaceful warrior, when an urge comes up, imagine watching into the ocean and there's all these waves coming versus sitting in the ocean and being part of the wave and riding these urges. Imagine you're just on the beach, you're detaching your thoughts and you're watching these thoughts come over and you're just watching the waves. You're not riding the waves, you're not in the ocean, you're very, very detached from them. So the peaceful warrior knows that any energy you put into the craving or the urge makes it stronger. And so you separate awareness from attention. So right now I am aware of the fact that there's car noise in the street. I'm aware of the fact that I'm barefoot and my toes are a little cold. I'm aware of the fact that I have the taste of lunch in my mouth, but I'm not pouring attention into that. It's not where my attention's going. My attention's coming right here. So these things can all be happening, but it's not pulling me into it. So when you're separating your awareness from your attention, you can notice the urge, but don't run away from it. Because again, the second you start to run, it'll start giving you more neurological junk to make you even more and more likely to move into that trigger. So the peaceful warrior can sit quietly, observe the urge as they're just doing their normal day. And then as you observe it, you'll notice that it also subsides. The more you observe these urges, how they rise and they fall, the less frequently they come. Have you guys heard of, with Tinkerbell, if you clap a lot, she comes back to life. But if you stop clapping and stop thinking about her, she dies. It's very, very similar with urges. They thrive on your attention. So let's stop feeding that. And then mindfulness training helps so much with this. The only winning move is not to play when it comes to the addictive urge. So again, we're not putting the energy into it. We're not trying to logic it. We're just watching. We're not playing the game at all. And something that can help a lot with this was I did a training back in, it was May 16th on this YouTube channel about how to create awareness and attention. There was a mindfulness technique in there where you sit, and it's called the noting technique. And it's just a daily meditation where you sit and you notice thoughts and you let them go. You notice thoughts and let them go. And getting better and better at being detached from your thoughts can help a lot when it comes to addiction recovery. So I would definitely recommend for someone really trying to grow their prefrontal cortex, take a look at that webinar and then start practicing, start maybe for 5 minutes a day, then move up to 10, 20, 15, however much time you have to get better and better at detaching from your thoughts and observing them in a third person way. Another way that you can create mindfulness is, let's say that your addictive behavior is always happening in a certain situation or a certain time of day. If you know that you are always triggered after work, after dinner in this certain area, then maybe after dinner, before you move on for the rest of your evening, you sit for 5 minutes at the table and you do a calming breath and you observe your thoughts for 5 minutes and you just practice detaching from thoughts. Could that be helpful? Anything you can do to increase mindfulness will help with addiction recovery. So that could be tracking. It could be sitting and tracking. On the worksheet this week, there's a place to track for just 3 days how often you notice that you have an urge. And we're not judging how often you have it. You're just noticing, how often do I have this urge? Track it. And the more you notice it and let it go, the less often it'll happen. Again, it's just starving from attention like Tinkerbell. And then also very important is really starting to separate the it voices from the you voices. So when the urge comes, being able to say, hey, it wants alcohol. It wants an iced coffee. It wants to eat the entire box of brownies. That's okay. What do I want? And separating out those voices so that you can stop and pause. And there's a technique called Stop, Challenge, Choose that I taught about March 22nd on YouTube about behavioral changes. You can use the Stop, Challenge, Choose technique. Take a pause, challenge what's going on in your head, separate the it voices from the you voices, and then choose, what do I actually want to do? Do I want to stop at McDonald's and get that coffee? Or do I want to keep going down the road and recognize that I only even thought about because it was in my eyes for a second? Make that choice. Now, the final step of this is getting excited. You really have to understand this is in your control. And when I was very first in recovery from binge eating, I had stopped the binge and was using this Stop, Challenge, Choose technique. I was separating the voices, but every day I was waking up, it was like 4 or 5 months, I was waking up every day with anxiety about, okay, well, I've made this change and I've gotten healthy, but what if it comes back? What if it comes back? And I was so anxious And finally, one morning I woke up and I thought about everything I had learned. I thought about the fact that I continued to choose not to feed my addictive habit. And I just realized I can just continue to choose not to. It's not going to just randomly come back unless I let it. I am in complete control over this. And that was 10 years ago now, and I haven't had a binge, and I don't think about binging, and I don't consider myself a binger. I'm just not that person anymore. I starved the attention from my habit. It's not something my brain's wired for anymore. I very much can notice when those little voices come up. I still, of course, want to eat brownies every time I see them. Of course, I want to do that. That's the function of my healthy brain, but I don't choose to do that anymore. So when we're talking about relapsing, it might happen, but nothing makes it happen besides you. You can put a bunch of people in the same situation who maybe have all recovered from alcohol and maybe put them in a stressful situation, and 100% of them do not relapse back into old behaviors. It is always a choice. Some of them might choose to because it's a tougher situation, but it is always, always your choice. And that is the biggest thing I try to teach my clients, is that your life is on purpose. Everything you do, you can make a mindful choice for. So something to think about. You're not broken. You don't need to go through excessive amounts of therapy when it comes to this sort of addiction recovery. At the point where the brain is giving you these signals, it's really just what you do because you do it. And it's a habit. And we can change habits. We can starve attention away from it. So I would encourage you to print out the worksheet for this one. This type of addiction recovery is called addictive voice recovery therapy. And it is all about really understanding how your brain works, sorting out the neurological junk, feeding attention into the you part of your brain, starving it away from the it part of your brain, and making sure that you know whatever you're doing with your hands, your voice, your body, that comes from here, and you can make those choices. So let's start practicing it. And I hope this has been helpful. Another really great book about this is, let's see, oh, hold on. There's a book from Gordon Bruin called The Language of Recovery. What's the other one? Rational Recovery. That's the one. Rational Recovery is the other book on this that covers this whole process. It's a really great one for people who are specifically dealing with binges. A book that's incredible is called Brain Over Binge by Catherine Hansen. But there's a lot about this out there. So feel free to keep digging around, leave me a comment about this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But this is a process that's worked for me and a lot of other people. There's lots of different addiction recovery processes out there. The one that works for you is the best one. But this method might be the one for you. It definitely has been for me and so many of my other friends. So my name is Sarah Starr. I offer private and weekly coaching. You can reach out to me. I would love to see if I could partner up with you on any of your health goals. I offer private coaching, accountability, support, homework. We really dig deep on this. You can see more information at my website, sarahstarcoaching.com. And I hope this has been helpful. Subscribe for weekly webinars and worksheets. Thanks.